The Irish Republican Army, or the IRA, is Northern Ireland's biggest Republican paramilitary group. It is an armed Irish militant group built on and devoted to Irish republicanism, which refers to the true belief that Ireland should be an independent republic. Although the IRA ended their campaign of violence officially in 2005, small IRA groups still exist today who utilize terrorist strategies.
But where did this terrorist organisation originate from, and what are the ideological reasonings behind their actions? Over the next few minutes we will briefly explain the history, origins and growth of the IRA, with specific reference to the strategies used by the group in their attempt to rid Northern Ireland of British sovereignty.
The term IRA was first used during Fenian raids on British soil in the late 1700s and 1860s. The original IRA was formed with members of the Irish Citizen Army, Irish volunteers who didn't want to enlist in the British Army during World War II, and other groups by 1970. The IRA originally fought a guerrilla war between 1919 and 1921 against the British forces. A guerrilla war refers to a form of irregular warfare in which a small group of combatants, in this case members of the IRA, use unconventional warfare such as ambushes, raids, sabotage, and petty warfare to fight a larger and less mobile traditional military, in this case the British forces. This war ended in a truce and the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1921. However, the treaty did not give a republic but dominion status, and the IRA split. Some joined the National Army of the new Irish Free State, while others continued to fight in the IRA in a brutal civil war between 1922 and 1923. A period referred to as the Troubles began in the late 1960s and continued for the next 3 decades. This was a result of a campaign to end discrimination against Catholic nationalist minorities by the Protestant Unionist-dominated government and police force. This conflict predominantly took place in Northern Ireland, though it occasionally spilled over into the Republic of Ireland, England, and mainland Europe. Unionists were mostly Protestants and generally wanted Northern Ireland to remain within the UK, whereas Irish nationalists and Republicans, who were mostly Catholics, wanted to leave the United Kingdom and merge with the Republic of Ireland. This conflict resulted in deaths of over 3,000 people, but despite religious differences between the two parties involved, it was not a religious conflict. After the Irish Civil War, another split formed the Official and Provisional IRA in 1969. The Provisional Irish Republican Army was the most influential group of the IRA during the Troubles. The military campaign of the Provisionals took 1 to 2 years to organize and become effective. The IRA's predominant strategy of military defense, retaliation, and offense then became the focus of the movement. The idea was to use force to cause the collapse of the government of Northern Ireland and to inflict enough casualties on British forces that the British government would then be forced by public opinion to withdraw from the region. The IRA agreed to a ceasefire in February of 1975, which lasted nearly a year before the IRA concluded that the British were drawing them away from military action without offering any guarantees in relation to the IRA's goals. As a result, the IRA launched a new strategy known as the Long War. This saw them conduct a war of attrition against the British, based on causing as many deaths as possible to create a demand from the British people for their subsequent withdrawal. As a result of this increasingly violent IRA strategy, Sinn Féin developed first, not as a political party, but as a function of the IRA to be a message board for them, and spread information among members, as well as recruit new ones. In the early 1980s, the British government withdrew special category status for convicted paramilitary prisoners, which caused the prisoners to protest. In 1981, Bobby Sands began a hunger strike and began to receive attention internationally. Before his death, Sands was elected as a Member of Parliament with the rationale that Prime Minister Thatcher surely would not let an MP starve to death. In fact, this was not the case. Margaret Thatcher began a hardline approach to Northern Ireland, referring to the IRA and Sinn Féin members as terrorists.
We will not compromise on this. There will be no political status.
And after 66 days, Sands' death surged IRA recruitment, Sinn Féin support, and international attention.
In the wake of Bobby Sands' death, the strategy known as the Armalite and ballot box strategy emerged. Whilst the Provisional IRA continued to pursue an armed struggle against the British Army, the elections in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland were contested by Sinn Féin. This strategy was built around the belief that military action and political mobilisation are not inherently contradictory, but rather may be pursued jointly, with one reinforcing the other. This strategy officially welded violence and politics together. The Provisional IRA and Sinn Féin were generally understood to have existed as inseparable organisational bodies with coordinated goals and interests. In many ways, though, this strategy was less harmoniously aligned than many had believed. The Provisional IRA and Sinn Féin are better understood as icons of competing ideologies. In the Irish armed struggle, the key for generations has been a special militant republican view of reality that has been based on an analysis of history. However, in the late 1980s, Sinn Féin leadership began to question how viable their political programme would be if they were closely associated with the IRA. The IRA's campaigns in England were particularly devastating for public image, as many of the targets were civilians or backfired as a result of miscommunication between members. The Northern Ireland peace process began in 1986. The aim was to initiate direct talks between Sinn Féin and other nationalist parties in the north and the south. Meetings between the Social Democratic and Labour Party and Sinn Féin began in 1988 and continued throughout the year. Sinn Féin's aim was to form an alliance of Irish nationalist parties for the purpose of achieving self-determination for the whole of Ireland. However, the Social Democratic and Labour Party insisted that this could only happen if there was an end to the IRA violence and dropping of the demand for immediate British withdrawal. Although these talks broke up without any agreement being reached, Sinn Féin began to deny links to the IRA.
Well, I'm very clear on this, and I have consistently denied membership of the IRA, although I've never dissociated myself.
But nobody believes it, Mr. Adams.
Well, that's fair enough.
Although these links still existed, it is clear that the Armalite and ballot box strategy had undermined the ideological coherency of republicanism. On the one hand, hardline dissidents in the IRA and Republican Sinn Féin condemned mainstream republicanism, and on the other, Sinn Féin was forced to publicly abandon support for militarism. In 1993, talks were once more resumed between Sinn Féin and the Social Democratic and Labour Party. Gerry Adams indicated the potential for an IRA ceasefire in return for British support for eventual Irish unification. Eventually, they reached a point upon which an IRA ceasefire might be mutually accepted by both Unionists and Republicans, the right to self-determination. The peace process began to move forward. Sinn Féin's signing of the Belfast Agreement, also known as the Good Friday Agreement, was not only a final abandonment of the Armalite, but also of traditional republicanism. In settling for the right to self-determination, Gerry Adams entirely strayed from his old line that he was totally opposed to a power-sharing Stormont Assembly and would accept no less than the end of partition in exchange for ceasefire. Subsequently, Sinn Féin's cooperation on the Belfast Agreement was a direct descent from their Armalite and ballot box strategy. The Belfast Agreement encouraged another split, as many Republicans did not support the move towards ceasefire.
Republicans. We do not want an internal settlement within the North.
Whilst Sinn Féin's acceptance of the Belfast Agreement could be considered a victory as their voter representation continued to rise, others considered the agreement a surrender. As a result of these contesting views, in 1998, armed Republicans styling themselves as the real IRA planted a bomb in the market town of Omagh, which killed 29 people. Although the Provisional IRA ended their campaign of violence officially in 2005, dedicating themselves to supporting exclusively peaceful means to achieve a united Ireland free from British rule, organisations such as the real IRA still remain today who are committed to traditional republicanism and reject the ballot box in clear favour of the Armalite. Although the Armalite still exists as a force of republicanism to some extent, its power has been thoroughly sapped by the impetus of the ballot box, and today the active political and militant wings of republicanism are entirely disassociated and oppositional.